Shalom, what is up, guys? I wanted to do a video today and talk briefly about this phenomena we know as targeted killings or targeted assassinations. Sometimes in the foreign media, especially, you'll see the term extrajudicial killings as regards to the Arab-Israeli conflict. So basically, there's a long history of the security forces here, and even in the pre-state, the Haganah, targeting terrorists, and more specifically their leaders or certain parts of their infrastructure outside of the judicial system. We have a very long history of this. It's very controversial. You'll see people, not so much here. I mean, you'll have some outliers that'll say this here, but mostly overseas, that will say that this is both illegal and immoral, and that there's no reason for it, and that it's not effective. Those are all wrong. It's amazing that, well, the double standard that exists against Israel, of course, it exists even in this particular topic. The UK, the US certainly has and still continues to engage in targeted killings of terrorist leaders outside of the judicial system. In fact, America even assassinated 3 of its own citizens: Anwar and Abdul Rahman al-Awlaki in Yemen, and Adam Gadan, which I believe was in Pakistan. Those were all killed in drone strikes. So, of course, you have Operation Neptune Spear, which is the special operations raid on the bin Laden compound in Pakistan that resulted in Osama bin Laden being killed. That was a targeted killing. The UK, I mean, they've assassinated in the past. They assassinated UK citizens that were affiliated with the IRA. So it happens. There's no clean way to deal with terrorism. There's no way to deal with terrorism that's going to satisfy all of our better natures. There's just no way around it. But let's take the case of Sheikh Ahmed Yassin. He's the spiritual founder of Hamas. He directed dozens, if not hundreds, of terror attacks against Israelis. And in 2004, we killed him in an airstrike in Gaza. We knew where he was going to be. We hit the car, his motorcade, and everything. And he was replaced by Sheikh Abdulaziz al-Rantisi, who we also assassinated shortly after, in the same methodology. So there are pros and cons to this policy, for sure. The leading assumption is that, of course, you cut the head off of the snake, it just grows back. You're going to get someone else. That's true. That's absolutely true. But it's very disruptive. Terror leaders that are constantly in fear of being targeted have to move around a lot. They never sleep in one place, 2 nights in a row. They change up their schedules a lot. They're not able to be as effective in their role as leaders of these organizations. So that's helpful. It drains a lot of resources. Look, they're foot soldiers like the Izzadin al-Qassam brigades. Those guys are nothing. Those are, low fish on the totem pole. Replacing those guys is very, very easy. I mean, they can recruit basically from window fronts in Rafah and Gaza City, no problem. Replacing an experienced courier, replacing an experienced financier, replacing an experienced bomb maker or a cell leader takes time, takes effort, takes money. These are finite skills that not everybody has. And when you remove someone permanently from the chain, it hurts the organization. It hurts the terror organization as a whole. And we've seen this. We've seen them become temporarily less effective. Of course, they do tend to find replacements for these people over time. But in the short term, it does buy us peace, as does mass arrests. In the I think it was 1994, Hamas murdered a border policeman, and as a result, the Shabak and the IDF arrested 400 known Hamas operatives in Gaza and deported them to South Lebanon when we were still occupying South Lebanon. and it basically put an end to Hamas terror operations for months. For months. So it is very effective in that regard. Some of the problems with targeted assassinations is, well, one, they tend to be more cleaner. Rather than simply carpet bombing an area or doing a ground insertion raid, going after one guy is almost always less destructive. There's less collateral damage. You're not as likely to hurt innocent people, civilians. One of the on the backside of that, sometimes it happens. Sometimes when you're trying to target just one guy in one of these targeted killings, sometimes you do kill accidentally, of course, his family, somewhat a bystander. It happens. But the carnage is always going to be less in these small, low scale targeted killings than it is in full blown military operations. One of the biggest examples of this as a success was after the 1972 Munich Olympic massacres, which, if you don't familiar with those, that was I believe it was actually the first time that Israel participated in the Olympics, if I remember correctly, which is sad. It was in 1972 in Germany. A Palestinian terror cell affiliated with the PLO and Black September took Israeli hostages and killed 11 of them. The response to that was something called Operation Wrath of God. Golda Meir, the prime minister at the time, got her security cabinet together, and they decided on a solution that they were going to basically unleash Israel's intelligence community to go after 11 Palestinians, not those who had actually participated in the terror attack itself, but those that had financed it, those that had organized for it, or whatever. And eventually they got 11 out of, not, I'm sorry, 9 out of those 11 names. They were able to kill. They killed them in places in Beirut, Rome, I believe in Greece. They got one guy, Paris, France, maybe the UK. I can't remember where exactly, but they got most of them, including the leader of that particular organization named Ali Hassan Salame. They finally got him, I think, in 1976 or 79, one of the two. And a car bomb. After that response, and especially as part of that response involved the IDF sending commandos to Beirut to assassinate 3 of the people on that list, and blatantly raided their apartment buildings and shot them basically in bed. It sent the message to the terror leadership: you cannot do this to us with impunity. We will find you and we will kill you. And after that point, the PLO could not operate openly on European soil. They couldn't operate openly basically anywhere, because we demonstrated that no matter where you are, we're going to get you if you keep this up. And it did make them paranoid. And there were several eulogies that terrorists gave, in Gaza City for other terror leaders, whatever. It's like, well, these raids are a problem. And Hamas has even petitioned in the past as a precondition for ceasefires that these targeted killings be stopped against their leaders. So obviously they have some degree of effectiveness. I mean, it's kind of a myth that they can replace people willy-nilly and that they have this ultimate amount of people that they can replace with. They just don't. Killing specific people in the cog, the cogs in the machine that make terror organizations work, does cripple them. Even if it's for a short while, it does work. And it forces them to change how they do things. That in and of alone makes it effective and worth it as a cost-benefit analysis. Some of the claims that this is immoral. I mean, look, a lot of these people are in areas where we can't just go in and arrest them and put them on trial. But if we leave them be, they continue to be a threat. Is that really moral to allow them to continue to be a threat? I mean, a lot of people have this beef against former president of the United States, Barack Obama, about the killing of Anwar al-Awlaki. Well, he was a U.S. citizen. In theory, he should have gotten a trial. That's true, but this is an extraordinary circumstance. The man was the head of al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, hiding in Yemen. He had he had so many ties to different terror attacks and globally, and especially in America. He was an open threat. There was no way to get to him in Yemen. There was no way to extradite him from Yemen to the U.S. to stand trial. Now you could say, well, okay, send in the military to get him or whatever. Okay, well, that's collateral damage. You're going to shoot up an entire village in Yemen to get one guy. Cost benefit analysis. And yes, I know that there were also innocent people killed in these drone strikes, and some of them anyway. It was much more cost effective and much more moral to try to take out Anwar al-Awlaki and consider him an enemy combatant in a war rather than consider him just a petty criminal that was entitled to a trial. Because he was a combatant in a war against the United States. I think it was perfectly just and moral to target him as such. Your right to trial and civil rights can only be extended so far, especially when you're an active threat against other people, and that we know this. I mean, he was the imam, I believe, at the Dar al-Hijra Mosque in Virginia, which has ties to some of the 9/11 hijackers, as well as the Fort Hood shooter. I believe the Times Square bomber also. A couple other plots, I think, that were also involved. I think the San Bernardino shooters also had something to do with that mosque at one point. This is obviously a very bad guy. I mean, this was not in any way a hidden fact that Anwar al-Awlaki was a terrorist. So the U.S. killed him with a drone. And because it was very likely that his son would follow in his footsteps, they also killed his son a couple weeks later in a drone strike as well. People say, oh, that's terrible. How are you going to kill a United States citizen and a minor because of who his father was? Well, I mean, yeah, he was a minor, but he was also 16, and there's evidence that he was involved in being groomed to take over for his father. You do not have to accept ongoing threats to your security. What's going to go with this? And many countries that engage in this kind of behavior don't care about civil rights. I mean, Russia is probably the #1 worst place in the world to be a terrorist. You can be a Russian citizen and they'll have you killed on live TV. The FSB assassinated a lot of Chechen terror leaders who are also Russian citizens. So there is that. I mean, the legal aspect of this is these people are enemy combatants in warfare. It's not illegal or illegitimate to target them. It's illegal and illegitimate to target civilians, which is what they do. It's not illegal to target them. It's not illegal to target enemy combatants. As far as it being immoral, people say, oh, laws are typically broken. Yeah, that's true. Sometimes laws are broken doing this, but you know what? Every terrorist breaks laws. Every terrorist breaks laws with the stated purpose of causing as much harm to innocent people as they possibly can. You have to weigh the scales. Sometimes this is a gray area. But yes, it is effective. Yes, it is legal. There's much legal precedent, much discussion around this. And yes, it's moral. And unless you're one of those pacifist at all cost types that says no killing is moral, which I have a moral problem with that position anyway, then there's nothing really untoward about killing a guy who's actively plotting to kill others. I don't see how that can be a problem. So, I mean, as far as the history of this particular phenomenon, I would recommend a book by Ronen Bergman called Rise Up and Kill First. It's just kind of like the history of Israel's intelligence community through the lens of the policy of targeted killing. It's a very good book. And I hope this has been somewhat enlightening. Shalom.